Hello, welcome to the National Youth Filmmakers Summit. My name is Dan Hudson. I am the executive director. We are so excited to bring back Olivia Peace now that she has a feature film. One of our nifty alumnus, Tahara, is the film that we are screening as part of the National Youth Filmmakers Summit, and really excited to dive in deep and talk about what it was like to make this. And to moderate our conversation, we are so fortunate to have Sean Weiner of Jacob Burns Film Center to dive in deep with Olivia and Jess. And I'm gonna dip out here. Sean, take it away.
Thank you so much, Dan. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with us. There's like kind of a coupling in these conversations called Above the Line. So we have another one where we're talking to Leah Gallant and Maya Cueva about their documentary film On the Divide. So what's kind of cool is that we get this narrative and nonfiction behind the scenes perspective on it. But today we're talking about Tahara, and we're joined by Olivia Peace and Jess Zeidman. I checked in on Jess's last name pronunciation because I'm a Weiner, not a Weiner. So she's a Zeidman, not a Zeidman. And this is the shared plight that Jess and I have. But welcome to both of you, and thanks so much for being with us today.
Oh, excited to be here. Hello.
Hi, thank you so much for having us.
Hey. So the conversation is really kind of, the assumption is that folks watching are thinking, well, how the hell do you do that? How do you make a first feature? When do you know how to make a first feature? Where are the decisions you make along the way? And so we'll kind of keep it to that, but I'll try to guide the conversation through different points of like production or development along the way, stages. But I feel like the best place to start is just to understand where each of you come from. Jess is the writer and the producer. Olivia is the director on the project. So these are sort of, amongst a team of creative leads, but like the kind of brain trust. And then getting to know how you two meet and decide that this is something you want to do together.
Should we get into it? I think we will.
Go for it.
So I wrote this film as an assignment for a class at Northwestern University, where I went as an undergrad. Olivia also attended Northwestern as an undergrad. And I was in a class taught by Stephen Cohn, who's a filmmaker in Chicago, called Writing the Micro Budget Feature. Look at that. And I wrote like 35 pages of it. I was a junior in college. And I got really exciting feedback from my classmates and from my professor. And also I myself felt something where I was like, oh, this is something I want to keep working on. This isn't just like a homework assignment. This is something I'm genuinely excited about. And so then through the next couple years of my schooling, when I was a senior, I took another class called Editing the Feature Length Script. And that was really helpful. That helped me like get the first draft to a second draft to a third draft kind of place with like a really encouraging group of people. The person who sat next to me in the class was Dasha Gorin, who ended up being the person turning to me and being like, we should make this movie for real. Like, I really think this is possible. And she ended up being the first person to come on as a producer of the film. And so then I come from a theater background. I went to theater camp as a kid. I did playwriting workshops in Rochester, New York, where I'm from. And I studied playwriting as part of my studying at Northwestern. I studied. But then I was used to the artistic collaboration as a playwright, working with a director, not directing my own stuff. And I wasn't really interested in directing. And I'm actually still not. So I like being a writer, and I like the ways that directors, when they're not you, can see things that you don't see. And so Dosh was asking me about people that I would be excited to work with. And someone who came to mind, especially because the script had these sort of surreal moments, was Olivia, who was a couple of years ahead of me in school and had made a couple of shorts that I'd seen throughout my time and I was really impressed by. And I really wanted to see if they would be interested in either helping, just consult, but really directing the script. So I messaged Olivia on Facebook. The year was 2018, people. And I messaged Olivia on Facebook and they sent me their email and I completely copied and pasted it incorrectly. And I sent off the script and then I didn't hear anything. And I was like, okay, not interested. That's okay. So we talked to a couple of other people and no one was really fitting. And I was like, I'm really so bummed that Olivia wasn't interested at all. And Dasha was like, let me reach out. Maybe then we can get like a concrete answer, you know? And then Dasha emailed the correct email with the script to Olivia. And then, yeah, we had like a really long phone call that I'm sure Olivia, I'm going to pass the baton, will tell you about. And yeah, we ended up starting this really fruitful and exciting collaboration.
Yeah, I mean, I think it came to me at a good time because I had just finished up Sundance Ignites program and I'd met you, Sean. But something that we had been taught through Sundance is that, oh, your first feature, like it should be something that you write, like don't take any other scripts. So I opened the script fully intending to read it and give notes and like pass on it. But then it was funny. And so the way I would read scripts back then was me and my roommate would project it up on the wall of our living room and we would like live act everything out. And so I found that like every couple of pages, I would turn to my roommate and be like, oh, and then Jess should do this. Like I'm still acting like Jess is gonna direct it. And so I kept writing down all these ideas that I was having for the script. And then Jess and I had like a really long call about it where I gave like 3 pages worth of notes of like, oh, I think you should do this and this and that. And Jess just kept saying yes. From everything from, oh, I think that this should be partially animated to, oh, I think you should shoot it like it's on Instagram in a 1:1 aspect ratio. Like all these things kind of came very early on, all these big ideas. And yeah, Jess was just game. And then at the end, she was like, okay, so are you going to direct it or? And I think I actually said I had to think about it and then came back and said, yes.
Cool. It sounds like you said yes. You broke up just a little bit right at the end, but I believe the answer was that.
Oh yeah.
It all worked out. I think we know it all worked out because of
it exists.
It's still existing. That's amazing. It's so interesting because it sounds like you. Sometimes, you know, we love working with our friends, and a lot of times we come up with people who we're close with, kind of personally, but both personally and sort of like then build out the professional angle. But oftentimes, I think a lot of the successful collaborations are creative people who meet each other kind of under more of a professional heading rather than a personal heading. And it sort of sounds like even though this was incubated in your school experience, which is great, and sort of came up in that way, when you actually pitched it and talked to one another, you really were a writer speaking to a potential director and having a little bit more of a professional conversation about a project and treating it properly in like those roles. Does that resonate?
I think that's a great way to put it. And I think something both Olivia and I have learned along the way is that even if somebody's not your bestie or like someone you really, really know, it's people in your world, in your network, in your community want to help you and want to work with you and are excited about your ideas if you're excited about them. And I think it was a really good way to break the ice that we continued to break like time and time and time again of asking someone tangentially related to us, like, will you help support this film in this way? Will you work on it? Will you, like help us with this leg of the production journey or this part of the festival experience or this? And like, I think sometimes though there's like a very snazzy story around like these 2 best friends like went out and they did this, I think that's amazing. But I think don't be afraid to reach out to people whose work you admire and who are peers of yours to work with them. I think that's also a really exciting and fruitful way to work. I'm loving the word fruitful today.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll add to that though, but then sometimes I think when you are friends with people, you might not, basically don't pass up your friends though, right, when it comes time to actually crew up, because Our editor and sound designer are some of my best friends, and they killed it. Like they completely brought the film to life, like saved the film several different points.
In every single
like Troy, our editor, like flew out, I think with like a couple days notice to Rochester to edit on set, which saved us countless times having the editor on set so we could see how the film was working like almost live every day. So yeah, friends and peers.
Yeah.
I mean, that's incredible to even, and that was deciding to have an editor on set something that you responded to? You sort of realized like, oh, maybe that would be a helpful thing to do? Or was that something that kind of at the outset that was built into the plan?
So I did this thing. I think this might just be a thing that directors do sometimes. You really, leading up to a shoot, you will convince yourself you don't know what you're doing at all. And so I went on this journey of just like calling everyone I knew who directed and being like, can you help me know how to do my craft? And one person was like, okay, something that really helped me was having an editor on set because then we could see dailies. And so, you know, we came in, I think day one, we were nervous and the first scene like just wasn't cutting together. So, but that's something we found out that night versus once we all flew back to Los Angeles and New York City, which would have been awful. So kind of along the way, like I was also able to learn and see how I was doing along the way, which was huge, super incredible. Probably saved us a lot of money too.
Yeah, and just the peace of mind was always helpful. It was helpful to realize that like as overwhelming as production can feel, like that's the beginning of a much longer journey. So it was nice to have that sort of foresight in real time. I think that always made me feel better to be like, hey, Troy, did that work? And he'd be like, yeah, it could definitely work. And we were like, great.
Well, it's so clear that, I mean, you both have really distinct voices in your writing and in your way of kind of visualizing or you know, bringing to the image the way you tell stories. And so I think some of it, the film itself, you know, though, like certainly like, right, a micro budget, like, you know, a first feature, something that one can actually lift off the ground, has such a clear voice and style and like tone to it and mood to it. And I think it's impossible. It must have been incredibly valuable to be able to see that that was happening along the way, so that you could sort of see like, oh, okay, so when we do this thing, or these types of shots are really working, or like these pauses, like an awkward pause is actually this long instead of that long, you know, like things that just inform, so that you're like learning from yourself and like, and realizing what the Olivia and Jess combined mood and style is, which I think you both have those styles individually initially, but it's about finding a way to bring those things together to be something new, which isn't a question, it's just an observation, but I think
a good one.
It makes sense that editing on set would help you see it, and also it takes away the anxiety, you know, like it's like, oh, okay, this is working, or we caught something that we would have missed that would have caused a lot of anxiety later.
Yes.
I want to take us back just one step before we continue on production, just to, I mean, once Olivia's on board, you're making a feature, you're just like, we're going to do it, come hell or high water, we're just going to make this thing. Like at what point do you know this is something that you're going to do, and how much of a leap of faith is it? How much money has to be in practically, or how many people have to be on board, or how many friends have like certain pieces of equipment that when their powers are combined, it's enough to pull, you know, like when did you know it was happening, and what did it take to kind of say, okay, we're really marking this down on our calendar?
It's a great question. So we had the financing from like, I financed the film with the help of my parents, and that was like the first conversation, was the budget, making sure everyone who's going to work on it was going to get paid, making sure people could have the right transportation. We were going to film in my childhood synagogue, Temple Bethel in Rochester, New York, which is, as we all learned together, except for me, who knew, a little bit further from New York City than first realized. And so it's like that was like a bit of a recalibration. And I think for me, it started clicking into place when Olivia and Dasha and Madison were really sending out the script to people, and people were saying, yes, I want to work on this. When is it shooting? What are we going to do? Like, how is this going to happen? And it was all those yeses that I think really made me realize, like, oh, not only do I want this to happen, and Olivia and Dasha and Naz want this to happen, like other people are excited to work on this. And that was sort of the part where I was like, oh, it's real. It's real because people are willing to spend their time and their energy doing this.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I think for me, it became really real where I went through the script and we were working on some rewrites. And so we had like a 3-hour long phone call placing arcs for each character that's on screen throughout the day. And we just got really in depth with like backstories and like the themes that we were going for, what we wanted people to walk away feeling when they left the theater. And yeah, that was a really important time spent too, because then once we got on set, we were able to tell that to our actors, you know, and the rest of the crew. So it was good. Oh yeah, and our cinematographer brought the equipment. Like,
oh yeah,
yeah. Tahila De Castro, a genius, a legend. She's out here in LA with me, and we did interviews. I can't remember how many cinematographers we interviewed, but she was my favorite by far. I found out later on she had literally just graduated from college. So this was her first feature too, but she was the first person where I talked to her about that 1:1 aspect ratio, and she was excited and she had ideas. And so, yeah, we worked together. She shot it on the Alexa Mini with these gorgeous zoom lenses, the ingenues. And yeah, she just kind of worked out a deal with her friend who owns a camera house out here. Shout out to Jared. And I think she got 2 lights, Jess, right?
We had 2 lights.
Yeah, two lights that were in great condition until they went on the plane. One of the lights broke on the plane. So then we had one light for the Zoom.
And then Tahila was like, I'm pretty sure that we can make a light out of like a catering dish, like a chafing tray or whatever. And then she and our gaffer Leo got to work in my childhood living room, and they made another light. And we
1.5.
we used it for the whole shoot.
Mm-hmm.
That's so incredible. That's so incredible. And it's also, I mean, it just goes, and I guess in a roundabout way, having 1.5 lights, you know, well, it's maybe easier to set up and break down a shot because there's only so much that you have to work with. So it's like, okay, that's it. You know, we can leave it here or here. Okay, that's it. So that certainly helps in terms of time. One thing that you just pointed out, Olivia, is like the energy captured in folks making their first insert the blank, so like the first feature. And I think that a lot of the times for first time feature filmmakers, I mean first time filmmakers at any stage, you can wind up seeing people who you love or meeting professionals who are kind of further along in the game, but not finding that sort of symbiosis or that kind of feeling of like we're at the same moment and we're looking to like cut our teeth, we're gonna do it, you know. It's like and that just if you guys could talk about like that energy or like why it's maybe helpful for folks to all jump together, and also I think particularly for just, you know, filmmakers who are not like cishet white males, like the part of, you know, it's really hard to feel validated in taking on a lead creative role, and sometimes when you're when you bring on, I'm gonna pick on like DPs, but when you bring on a DP who's like has shot 5 features and they come in and they're gonna shoot your first feature, they're telling you how it is, as opposed to you really collaborating together. So if you guys could talk a little bit about, you know, creating your team, but also like where those team members are so that you can kind of get together as a unit and really like do this thing together with all this shared energy.
Ooh, I have a lot of thoughts. I think it was important to us like to not have a crew full of like white film bros. We wanted chill vibes only. We wanted everyone to be respected on set. So every step of the way, we were really intentional about how we were communicating with people, and trying to just sort of like generate that sort of respect on our set and that sense of calm. Because especially we're entering a house of worship, you know what I mean? Like we can't be fighting in the synagogue. And you know, a lot of people were flying in. Like we flew in from LA. A lot of people came from New York. So people are far from home for a while. So it needs to feel safe so people can do their work. In terms of who we ended up getting, I think sometimes like it feels like a risk to be working with people where it's their first time or whatever. But I mean, I think the thing that helped me was people insisting to me that making a feature is the same thing as just making shorts, which was not fully true, but it helped me to feel safe in my spirit. And then I think, to be honest, everyone sort of approached everything with a real willingness to experiment and play and find the right shot, like find the right words. And so it became an experience, I think, of us like finding the film together versus someone coming in and trying to tell us like how it's supposed to be, which I think made it a really good learning experience for everyone, definitely for myself.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think that element of finding the film together was something that was really exciting about this. Like, I think something that has come from both the collaboration between Olivia and I, but I think the collaboration of everyone who worked on this film was no one was ever trying to be like, it has to be XYZ way, or like, this is the future of this film, this is where we're headed, this is where we're going. I think we were all trying to stay really present in the moment because we were all learning so much together. And sometimes that led to a little bit of like, who's driving the bus? Are you driving the bus? Am I driving the bus? And that's just because, you know, that's the feeling of making a new piece of art together. I feel like in general, like you don't totally know where you're going until you're there. And then you've got farther to go. But something I loved about the energy of this film so much was that everyone was excited to take risks and like wanted to try something new. I think from like a crew standpoint, we had people really having for the first time real authority in their positions and feeling comfortable to like make choices. And then on the cast side, we just had so many people who are naturally funny and wanting to play and wanting to improvise and like feeling comfortable and safe enough to do that in an exciting way. And so I think it led to so many opportunities for the film to grow, like from the first draft of it to what it is now. Like it is so the product of like a million little collaborations. And I think that's what it should be. I think we can all sort of see ourselves in the movie we made.
You definitely preempted my next question, which was exactly that. Like, you bring together this creative team. They all have different superpowers. And certainly with a film envisioned through Olivia, you're reaching into things like animation as well, and all these different spaces that can create visualizations. How, you know, I think a shocking moment, especially with a feature, is like more so than a short. It's so it's kind of like It Takes a Village. It's like it's like you send your kid to school and then they come back and you're like, oh, okay, I don't control what you are anymore. It's like the world now is informing who you are. And so how did the film change, or can you share ways that, like, in whether it's in selecting who was on your team or just during production, that you saw the film or the story or the characters growing maybe beyond your quote unquote control, and then how did you respond to that? How are you able to like find comfort in that? Because I think that can be, for a lot of especially like early filmmakers, I think that can be very scary. I feel like I've seen a lot of filmmakers be like, this isn't what's supposed to be, and you're like, no, but it's probably better because you're only one mind. So, you know, how did the film kind of grow beyond your original idea along the way?
Ooh, who should answer first? Should I go?
I'll go and then you go. I'm going to point to a really big example. Maybe Olivia had the same one in mind, and she can also talk on it. But I hadn't envisioned a person of color playing the role of Maddie. I think my view was a little limited there.
That's Carrie, Maddie's the person.
Oh, sorry, Maddie's the actor. I always do that. Carrie Lostein. And that was something Olivia, when we were first talking, was like, I'm excited to see that. Like, if this is going to be my first feature, I want to see someone like me in the spotlight, in the lead role. And I think I envision this character this way. And for me, I was like, that is a real like genius move. That's a real expansion of this character into a nuanced and exciting conversation about faith and teenagerhood and friendships and power dynamics. And it's not something I would have necessarily thought of on my own, thinking of the forms of like Jewish representation in media that we get. You know, we're like, Jewish girls have curly hair and they're white and they, you know, they're this and they're that. And it's like, that's not the truth of our reality and of our world and the way we want to see our world going forward either. We want to see the intersectionality of like, you know, worshiping spaces and all of that sort of stuff. And I think Olivia was smart to ask for that at the top and then continue to deepen the character in that way. And then we really got to find Carrie together. And that's like something that I think helped the film so much, is even making that choice up top opened me up to every time someone was like, I see this script as this, I was like, yeah, why couldn't the script be like this? Why couldn't the film be like this? And it also kind of gives you sort of feeling like, I don't know why this metaphor is my thing, but you're sort of in the driver's seat in a weird way where you're like, wait, I can do more with this piece of art than I realized. Like, it doesn't just have to fit this one box of like, first feature, first big piece of something, first, you know, foray into like who I am as an artist and my artistic voice. Like, it allowed me to realize, like, in that letting go, you can find so much more and you can say so much more that you maybe would have always wanted to say, but didn't know how to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sense of surrender, I think, was just like all up and through this process. And part of it, I think it is sometimes a blessing to be a beginner. Because when you kind of are a little shaky on how things are supposed to go, you're just more willing to open yourself up to what something is versus what you want it to be. I think a big thing for me, and yeah, by the way, like, Madeline killed it. Like, she's an incredible, incredible actress, and I'm so glad that we got to work with her. And Rachel, we actually found through our casting, why am I going to say casting agent? That's not the casting director, Noah, because they had worked together on something else. So it was just like a really cool serendipity there, I think. But for me, I think the big moment of letting go was in the edit. It took us way longer to edit this movie than I thought it would. Like, somehow I think we finished our shoot in like May, right, mm-hmm. Jess?
That's right.
And I thought, okay, yeah, by August we'll be locked, like picture, sound, color, everything. Because I was going to be starting grad school at USC. I go to USC and I do interactive media and games. So I was going to be learning how to code and stuff. And I was like, okay, I'm going to finish this movie and then go over there. And what ended up happening is there was a period of time where just I was editing the film by myself, which took way, way longer. We had a ton of different cuts. And then I ended up starting grad school. So I would go to school during the day and then at night go down to the basement and be editing the film by myself until midnight when the lab closed. That was a moment. And then Troy, our editor who was on set with us, came to LA on vacation and asked to see a cut of the movie and then just quietly took it over, quietly took over the edit. And we just tried everything. Like, at some point, Troy and I like recorded little music for the film that no one will ever hear.
It's amazing. I have to say, the music is amazing.
You know, we added voiceover throughout. Yeah. That was an iteration that we tried. We had like all these different animated, at some point we turned Samantha into a ghost that no one will ever see.
No.
And so kind of throughout this process, we actually finished the final cut came in January, for real. That was like right before the premiere of our movie. And so throughout this process, like we just kept seeing like more and more opportunities to go deeper, to pull out people's performances, to cut around like stuff that just wasn't feeling right. And so the film kind of just emerged through that process. Yeah, and then into where it is today. And then sound added so much to it as well.
Mm-hmm. It's so it made me think of a couple things. One was just the appreciation for casting Maddie, and you know, as a multiracial dude with the last name Weiner, it's like, it's absolutely true. It's like, you know, we miss the nuance and like how the spectrum of people in any experience, and kind of the only way. You know, representation sometimes has its limits, but it also has its like kind of incredible power, right? To just like put out there that like these people can look like this too, right? That like our families are concoctions of so many different experiences and backgrounds all the time. So I appreciate that, and I also appreciated the resistance to, or there wasn't, it wasn't a focal point of the film. You know, the decision was made to sort of maybe swap out or think about these characters as looking maybe different than initially envisioned, but then that didn't become the focus of the story, right? And I think that actually allowed for the characters to feel more real, right? Because they're not being compartmentalized into like, you know, a member of this community can look like this and like this, and this is how they could look like this. You know, it's like, instead it's just like, that's, you know, you go to school and that's what schools feel like. You know, it doesn't matter what, you know, what faith the school is, or whether it's a secular school, or even what part of the country you're from. So I'll leave that at that, but I do appreciate that. And then I think this notion of having an editor, because I still to this day, with incredibly accomplished filmmakers, we'll see folks engage on a new thing, try a narrative for the first time, and then they'll edit it themselves. And I'll always see these bleary-eyed, brilliant filmmakers like 5-6 weeks into trying to edit this, and they're like, okay, I'm gonna show you this movie. And I'm like, okay, great, I'd love to see it. And they're like, nobody else has seen it. I'm like, oh, well, then I'm honored to be. It's like, who's your editor? It's like, me? I'm like, wait, how did we get here? Because it's like, it's so hard. And I think it's really hard coming up because you know, there's a real deep connection between editing and directing. There's a lot of things that are really similar, right? You're not live on set, but you're manipulating the story, you're making choices, you realize you can go in this direction or that direction. So a lot of similar muscles are at play, but it doesn't mean that a director should be their editor, their own editor, you know, and there's such a gift to be, you know, of having somebody else in the room to collaborate and to kind of bring it further. And so I'm just kind of also labeling that because it's just something that I think I've just seen happen a lot, and it makes perfect sense. It's like, well, I edited my shorts. I mean, I'm not saying this of you, Olivia, just in general, it's like, oh, I edited my shorts, so of course I'll edit my feature, you know. But it's like, it's a marathon. And also there's, as we grow and our teams grow, it's like we realize there's nothing better than knowing that this DP or these two DPs are the ones that visualize what you imagine an Olivia piece film looks like, you know. It's like, or this editor gets the rhythm that I'm going for. It's like that sharing in that makes the weight of the project so much lighter, and also frees you up. It's like the notion of a director, like the sort of myth of the director is just being like the visionary, and it's like, yeah, but what does that mean? You know, like in practice, what is that? And it's like, what is it? It's like one part thinking about how to visualize what's text on the page, and like the other part is like, feels like it's morale, you know. It's like making people feel safe, making people feel excited to be there and validated that they're giving really good stuff and we're all cooking something together. And so often I think when like a director shoots something for themselves or edits, it's like you deny the project that person, that really important person in the process, who is the director, who has the space to think in that wider sense, or think about things more cohesively, you know, because they're there for the whole ride. So again, I'm just monologuing and I apologize, but you sort of brought that
Good
up.
monologue though.
And it's a really important thing because I feel like I see it happen all the time, and nice to maybe let other folks know that that happens. Compromises, not to be negative, but like, are there compromises along the way? Can you share a little bit about places where, you know, it's like, okay, we want to do that scene, we're not gonna be able to do that scene, or we had this shot, but we couldn't do that shot, and how to get through the compromise in the moment, and then also how ultimately, you know, how compromise like impact, like does it actually feel like you've really sacrificed so much, you know, ultimately? How did you guys handle compromises along the production and the post?
Great question. We haven't mentioned this, but the synagogue where we filmed was under construction while we were filming there. And so that led to, I'll say, daily, if not hourly, compromises of location changes, location adjustments, schedule adjustments for the actors, schedule adjustments for the crew. The one example I can like definitely point out is that we really wanted to do the kiddish luncheon, the you know, the part after the service where they're like scooping the bagels and doing the lox. We wanted to do it in this like little room that's downstairs in the synagogue that had these really beautiful curtains, these sort of like gossamer curtains that Tahila, our DP, loved. And then that room had to be gutted for asbestos. So then we couldn't film in there at all because they like cleared everything out of the room and it was totally locked down. And like the schedule changed to such like, oh, we could have had done this, you know, if we had done this at the beginning, we could have shot it in there, but we waited and now can't get into that room. And so it was like a conversation between like Tahila, Olivia, myself, our amazing production designer, Jane Clark, about how we could recreate that feeling of that room in a different space that wasn't being, you know, gutted for asbestos. And I think in the moment, those things feel really hard. I think for me, at least, production definitely pitches up emotions, and it definitely feels like you want to do the best you can now because you want to come out with a film that you're proud of and excited about. And you want to feel that both proud and excited in the moment. And so then when those pieces start to fall away, you're like, it's all going to fall apart. But, you know, Jane got some similar looking curtains and we tried our best. And it ended up becoming a beautiful shot because Tahila is a magician and a wonder, and Olivia directed, you know, the hell out of it. And it didn't, you know, completely ruin the film, I would say. And I think it's more that in the moment, you know, regardless of if you're in pre-production, post-production, production itself, on the festival circuit, navigating all this stuff, there's going to be moments of like, I'll say surprise disappointment, where you're like, I really thought that would have worked out. That's not the piece that I thought was going to go wrong. And it does, but it's important to remember that like you have the strength and the flexibility to keep going. I think that's so much of the filmmaking journey. And like, it's important to talk about it. And it's important to realize that like those compromises are making things different. They're not making things worse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, wow. I think that's a really good way to put that. So, I mean, the other thing is, so I came from doing like shorts and music videos, that sort of thing. So when Jess is like, oh, our budget's $100,000, I was like, amazing. Like one location, this is the most money I've ever had. Like, and then by just paying people, the money was gone essentially. So there was kind of this, okay, we have to work with what we have, type mentality that we tried to like bring to everything. So then when it came time for animation, we kind of had to, you know, Emily, who's also a Nifty alum, and I had this like Pinterest board full of like these amazing films that are like animated art films, and we were like, yeah, it's going to be just like that. But then when it came down to it, to our budget and like the time that we had to start like making some cuts, making some decisions on how can we get these emotions across in the most kind of scaled back way. So instead of it being like, we create like stop motion, these two like start spinning around and like take off into the universe or something. Maybe they can just be in like this black box type theater. And it's just like a slow rotation or something. And again, I think like just said, in the moment, when your idea is going from something that you felt like was perfect in your mind to now seeing what it actually has the potential to be, it can feel devastating or like the whole film is ruined. But ultimately, I mean, people think that that's, you know, one of the best parts of the film. I think it works really well.
Yeah, it's so hard to remember that nobody knew
Yeah.
what the original text was. Like truly. And so it's like, I think that the opening scene is like, it feels, the space feels so clear to me, and I'm like, and I'm not looking at curtains, I'm certainly not looking at the background or looking at the space, I'm meeting these new people who I'm going to spend, you know, an hour and a half with, and they're compelling and interesting, and the world's kind of like darkly comedic in a way that makes me uncomfortable but intrigued. And so like, and I think the same thing goes for, right, you know, it's like, yes, right, animation can do so much, but also it does so much with so little, you know, and it's so infrequently comes into a narrative. And so there's just a so much potential that's unlocked just with that trend, the idea of juxtaposing those two mediums. Right, nobody knows. So yeah, so interesting. And I guess along the way, there's this need of that community, and the way, like, as long as throughout those disappointing moments or moments where you feel like a little down, you have the teammate or the person who you can like express that to. Because I find, I mean, we were talking to Leah and Maya about their doc, but it's like, you get to, you know, you get to slam dance for a world premiere, and everybody's like, whoa, like I wish I was as lucky as Jess and Olivia to make this film. Look at, like, they just had this honeymoon experience, but like it was so up and down to get there, and it's so up and down after that point too. I always think about the film business as being like, sometimes you like get to go on an elevator to the next floor and you're like, here I go, and then like the doors open up and it's just flames, and you're like, oh, these problems now. You know, it's just like problems after problems. They're just new ones, and you're constantly feeling this up and down.
Speak on it. Sean, you're a producer, so you know that. I mean, like, even the premiere, like the film was kind of not done. Like when we landed in Utah, premiere ended up going great. And then we were like, all right, here we go out into the world. January of 2020, and then and the pandemic hit, and it just sort of disrupted everything. So yeah, it definitely was an experience of going up and down and finding our way, finding new people to help us out. Yeah, we learned a lot through that process.
Absolutely. And it is like a thing where you think like, okay, once we pass this hurdle, we're chilling, it's good. And then it is really elevator opening to the floor full of flames, and then realizing, like, I really think a lot of it is Olivia and I looking at each other and being like, you know what, we've seen worse, we'll walk through, you know, like it's a lot of that. It's a lot of learning, and it's also like I have to constantly remind myself, like, I've never done this before. It's okay if I make a step in the wrong direction, because I'm just trying my best here, you know. Like, I think it can feel really overwhelming. It's funny that you say, like, they're slam dance, it's all good now. Like, I think sometimes it can really feel that way amongst like up and coming filmmakers, where you're like, yeah, they figured it all out. It's like, we're all figuring it all out. No one's totally there yet. And that's, I think, a huge part of just being an artist.
100%. I would love to, just as a kind of a final question for our conversation, just sort of oh gosh, it's like very corporate, like, what are the takeaways? But you know, coming through this, I think a lot of times we think any project is the project. We feel that way with our shorts too. It's like, well, this is the short, it has to be perfect. And it's like, no, you're going to make a bunch of shorts, and the one that you don't think is the best one is going to be the one that everybody likes, and then you're going to be like, what does that mean? So coming through, I think like Tahara winds up having this like really great life. I feel like I've been engaged. I was only lucky enough to see it recently, probably because I wasn't able to be at these festivals, and but I've seen people respond to it. It's been a film that I've been really aware of for what feels like 2 years of pandemic right now. Where do you go? Like, how do you carry things from this, and how does it inform what you want to engage with next? Because I feel like there's a sense that there's a track of how to do things, and so this is going to do this and this is going to do this, and then we all just walk, but it never feels that way in truth. So I'd love to get a sense of kind of how has this project informed your next steps, and what has it taught you about what to expect from the next project or the next projects?
Great. It's a great question. You want me to start it and then I'll pass it to you, Olivia?
Go for it.
Okay, sweet. I feel like my biggest takeaway here is really just kind of building the confidence and self-trust to keep going. I think it's been really encouraging to see how people have been responding to the film, if they've been able to see it, and that there is an audience for it, and there are people in a community that wants to see what we have to say. And I think through that, it makes me want to continue writing and becoming a better writer and making things that say stuff. Like, I think something I've been thinking on recently leading up to this Q&A is how much these are like inspirational moments for me being able to do this, because it reminds you the kind of multifaceted value of making a film is not just like, ooh, we're at the festival and we're doing the thing. It's like there's so much to what we get to share and talk about and discuss and explore in the world we live in, or the world we want to live in, or like all of that. And I think it just is inspirational that way. In a logistic way, I think if people want a more like a corporate answer, I think it's made me more conscious of like when I'm writing a new script, the kind of characters I want to see and the kind of worlds that I want to go to that are different than the one we made. I think after, talking about this film so much, there's also a point where it's like, okay, I'm kind of ready to talk about something a little bit different, and giving myself the grace to be like, you're not just this person who made this movie, so now you need to make things like this forever. I think I get very overwhelmed by that. So yeah, those are two of my takeaways, not boxing in and just kind of getting excited to think about the larger purposes of creating a piece of art.
Yeah, well, that's a good answer. I think throughout this process, I've built up a lot of grit. Like there are some things I think that would happen early on when we were like ideating on this during pre-production, shooting it like in 2019, that would like wind me, where I'm like, oh, how can I go on? Like just that now, honestly, I think are funny, and I feel, I don't know, there are many parts of this that have been a bit of like a trial by fire, but I've come out like, I guess, stronger on the other side. And by stronger, I mean like, things really don't bother me like that anymore. Like you see a problem, you have a tough conversation, you move on. Like, and so a lot of this for me has been, I think, a real, like a class in leadership, like how to be a good leader, how to stay gracious, like when things are kind of looking like they're falling apart, how to like go to someone and have those tough conversations, and that's what directing should be at its best. It's not just you like having an idea for like a movie or something and then like telling people what to do. It's you leading, and hopefully like people learning through that, and you learning with other people, having other people lead you sometimes too. So that, I think like some of the conversations and interviews that we've been able to have been talking about friendship too, in a way that's been really exciting to me. I love talking about friendship. I think we don't talk about it enough. And so I think that's kind of inspiring some stuff that I'm working on now, actually. So shout out to you, Jess, for seeing that, because I think we have so many movies about romantic relationships, about families, but not enough about friendships. And especially during this pandemic, my friends have been like everything for me. So I'm happy to get to put this out in the world so people can get some of that.
I really appreciate those answers. And I want to thank you both for being here and for having this conversation. And to your point, Olivia, about leadership, I think that so many folks, part of leadership is generosity and making a way for the folks kind of walking behind you and learning, you know, the folks who are you a year ago or a week ago or whatever. And so I appreciate both of your generosity and just sharing your experience, you know, so candidly and allowing for folks who are aspiring to make a feature or just sort of continue working in film. It historically has been such kind of like a black box industry where you just don't know how it works, and so you never get to try it because who would ever tell me where to start? And so I think you're both leaders in doing that work to let folks learn and get a sense of how it all works. So with that, I'll let Jess get to her.
The alleged parents from San Antonio.
And I'll welcome back Dan. So thanks so much for having us, Dan.
Thank you all so much. Thanks, Jess. Thanks, Olivia. Thanks, Sean. That was incredible. The film is incredible. If you're watching this and you haven't seen it yet, it is coming out on Film Movement. Congrats on that. They're a great distributor. So check it out when you have a chance. If you didn't already, it's incredible. Thank you for tuning into the National Youth Filmmakers Summit. We've got sessions running all the way up through the first week in November. So please check us out, nifty.org/summit 2021 for more programming. And thanks again, Sean, Jess, and Olivia.
Thank you.
Thank
so
you.
much. All right.
Bye.